market, you have to have a special license for that, and so all the patients cannot take these drugs, and they are mostly accessible for the cancer patients. Neuropathic pain patients, very few will find that these patients are taking this sort of opioid drug. Affordability is again a very important concern for a country like India, because we know these drugs are quite expensive, and we have to choose amongst safety and efficacy is important, but at the same time, the affordability of the drug is also important concern for our patients. Doses and adjustment of doses and tolerability profile. As I said, if you see the Western literature, you find they are using very high doses of the drugs. But practically, when we use these drugs in our patients, they are very sensitive, and even if you are lowest possible dose, they are they are only effective, but if you go to a higher doses, they have their own set of side effects. So the doses adjustment and tolerability is again an important issue in our subcontinent. And adverse effects, as I said, they have their own set of side effects. So I just want to highlight, this is the drug, it's still not yet available in our continent, and this is another drug which is not yet available. So it's important that what is available in our country is important. Fixed dose combinations in India, yes, they are commonly available because they reduce the cost and you can get a better pain relief by combining the two drugs. You have a better patient compliance. But again, they have their rationality is important here. You can once the combination you're using, you will find several irrational drug combinations which are there in the open market, and we should avoid this. Dosing flexibility, yes, it's not so good as you're using the monotherapies. So about vitamin B12 methylcobal, again the efficacy is still not clear, although their results are encouraging. We try to utilize the lower doses for the, as I said, our patients they are more sensitive as compared to the Western population, and we try to use lower possible doses as compared to Western populations. Like this pregabalin 50 start with 50 mg, internationally 75 mg. We start with duloxetine 20 mg, and so similarly with amitriptyline we start with 10 mg. Internationally, if you see the international guidelines, tramadol 25, internationally is 50 mg. So you'll find the things are different in our subcontinent. And these are the same drugs that I just said that you will continue. You can have the same thing is there. The first line you have tricyclic antidepressants, pregabalin, gabapentin in all the conditions except trigeminal neuralgia. Yes, in this condition, yes, the things are a little bit different, and the drug of choice is oxcarbazepine, carbamazepine, and then now we have but rest of the conditions, it's the same thing. Tricyclic antidepressants and gabapentin, pregabalin, they are the first line, and then tramadol and other opioids are second line, third line. So you need to do some experimentation, yes, once you are using these drugs in our patients. And this is the overall approach I just want to highlight. You can start with the monotherapy, and then you follow up the patient at least for 2 to 4 weeks, and if you find that the response is inadequate, you can increase the doses. If you find the response not adequate, you can switch over and you can take another drug from the first line therapies, or sometimes you can consider a combination of agents. So I think that's it. This is just the last slide. I just want to highlight, if you are refractory to the drugs, this is my field of interest, interventional pain management. We do it in pain clinics. And this is all recommendations from weak to strong recommendations. You will find it here. And this is one of the last slide. This is a Roman physician which is used to have. This is a torpedo fish. And the electrical gills, the electrical shock produced by these gills used to treat neuropathic pain. And from there we advanced to the more sophisticated spinal cord stimulators, which are quite expensive, but they are the final answer of all these neuropathic pain conditions. Thank you.
Any questions from the house to any of these speakers?
Thank you, sir, Dr. Hamasa, giving your time in limit. ये हमारे दोस्त हैं इसलिए
I would like to
Madam.
हो गया
थोड़ा सा चाहे तो ऐसा क्या करें छोटा सा दो आप लोग स्लो चल गया
नहीं
स्लो टाइम लगा आप चले हम लोग चलेंगे सब
Sir, अभी free oral presentations यहाँ पे करवा रहे हैं team because of the lack of.
Is in OPD in the Tertiary Healthcare Institute of Sanjay Gandhi Medical College, Rewa. I am Dr. Rudraksh Sharma, a third year PG from SSMC, Rewa. So, let's begin with my topic. Every disease today claims to be asymptomatic. But if we have hypertension, we have a headache. If we have diabetes, we probably have polyuria, polydipsia. If there's one disease that is truly asymptomatic, that is today dyslipidemia. So I won't stretch a lot. Let's talk about the prevalence of dyslipidemia in India. As you can see, it's a very clearly an established risk factor for cardiovascular mortality as well as morbidity. Now, recent studies have shown that in India, high cholesterol is present in at least 30% of urban population, whereas 15 to 20% of rural population. And as we are moving towards our Achhe Din, that is so prosperous, the prosperous days, we see that there is an increase in dyslipidemia coming up. A study was performed by ICMR India B in 4 states. I'll just highlight the important points. You can see low HDL in 72.3% of the population. So, and a high HDL, what I mean is a high HDL in 11.8 and a low HDL in 72.8% of the population. So, we can see that this thing is a really right now big problem which is heading towards us. So, moving on, we have statins, the saviors here. Definitely one of the most effective agents in reducing the primarily LDL cholesterol levels and reducing atherosclerotic level events like stroke, etc. Now, despite these, statins are often underutilized, as many as 40% of the patients not receiving therapy. There are 3 reasons for it. One, I could say, there is the asymptomatic nature of the disease, there is adverse effect as well as there is cost. So, here, anyway, what we tried here was doing alternate day dosing, providing that the patient achieves their goal as per the NCEP ATP3 guidelines, as well as considering that the patients are not undertreated. So, moving on. So, this is my parent compound, atorvastatin, as we can see, the chemical formula here. And it's one of the most commonly prescribed statin, half-life approximately 14 hours, but its active metabolites take its half-life up to 20 to 30 hours. This is one of the primary reasons why we can consider alternate day dosing in this. Molecular weight of 1209, a selective HMG-CoA reductase inhibitor. Basically, what it does is blocks cholesterol synthesis. Next please. Next is the aims and objectives. My study had 2 objectives. There were 2 primary objectives and 1 secondary objective. The primary objective was basically comparing the efficacy of daily and alternate day dose of atorvastatin. Also, another thing was checking the safety of atorvastatin. There was also a secondary objective. What I tried doing was trying to find the effect on the BMI of the patient. Now, moving on, materials and methods. So my study was a prospective open-label parallel comparative study.
can go.
Okay, anyway, an image is missing. An image is
No need for imagine.
Okay. Anyway,
Go directly for results.
fine. Moving on, what I'm saying, I had a total of 137 patients taken in, and they were divided as odd-even criteria according to a convenience method of sampling into two groups. Of these, approximately 37 patients discontinued
You
treatment.
directly go with the results, huh? Publish the file. Just. Or directly you can say what is your conclusion.
Sure.
You know. You just conclusion.
I'll just show you the tables. It will hardly take a minute. This was the tables. As we can see that there's a baseline 4 and 8 weeks here. There's a decline in total cholesterol, in triglycerides, in HDL, whereas HDL is the marker which is comparatively increased. One interesting thing I found in my study, in my post-hoc analysis, was the effect of statins on blood sugar. In all patients, diabetic or not, it was shown that basically it was increasing the blood sugar. Now, thinking as to why this might have happened, in 2014 there was a recent research in which it was said, there was a team of Professor Scherzer, he's published this in his article, and said that basically statins activated a very specific immune response which stopped insulin from doing its job properly. He said that if we give a sulfonylurea glyburide alongside statin, this will suppress this immune response, and hence statins then would not be able to cause hyperglycemia.
You directly go with the result, Dr. Sir.
Sure. In conclusion, I would say that it is unequivocal now that alternate day therapy is definitely not inferior as compared to daily dose therapy, and this can lessen the economic burden, especially when patients today follow polymorphological regimens due to comorbidities, and definitely cost to the patient can be reduced. Thank you. Sir, you didn't let me show.
Where the study was carried out?
Sir, in SSMC, in my parent college, in the medicine OPD, along with the
Assessment
pharmacy. Yes, sir. Yes.
You have mentioned that there are your object aims were two and objectives were two.
No, there were definitely two primary objectives as well as one secondary objective.
Aim?
So,
You have mentioned there are two.
no, what I wrote was basically there were two objectives, two primary objectives as well as one secondary objective.
And aim?
So,
What was your aim and what was your objective? In the slide you have mentioned there were two aims and two objectives like that. So aim will be one and objective may be one.
basically, sir, maybe I must have typed it wrong or something, but basically there were just two primary objectives that I had. One
What do you want to do is the aim. What are the steps you have taken to do your topic are the objectives.
Okay.
So what is your aim?
My aim, there were two. My aim was to compare the safety and efficacy of atorvastatin
That's what you have to
daily and alternate day and alternate days.
What is your result? What is your conclusion?
My result is that both studies are definitely equal, and we can give alternate day therapy in 10 mg. What I have done here is I have taken
Have the
the
lipid levels come down in the
Yes,
same way it has
definitely.
been come
Yes,
when it
yes,
is taken
yes,
daily?
yes.
Yes.
and the
What
side
about
effect
safety
profile.
profile?
The safety profile, I had 12 ADRs in the daily group, whereas I had 5 ADRs in the alternate group.
ADR in which form?
What is the idea you have got?
The ADRs that I had got were, there were 3 cases of hypoglycemia, I had 1 case of myalgia, 3 cases of paresthesia. There was that slide which I could
How
not show
many days
because
did you
of
continue
dearth
the
of
study?
time.
What is the
Study.
duration of the study?
This study was 1 year, and it was conducted from 30th, from the 1st of July 2016 to 30th June
So what is your
2017.
final conclusion?
My final conclusion is this can reduce the burden provided compliance. Patients were followed 0, 4 and 8 weeks. So there were some study limitations. I don't know the long-term chronic effects, but acute effects is what I
So
know.
myalgias are reduced in alternate dosing?
There was one case of myalgia what I found in daily dosing and no case in alternate day dosing.
What was
So
the age group?
the age group what I had, sir, was there were patients above 18 years. There was one patient in 20 to 30. 20 to 70 is the age. Maximum patients that they were in the age group of 50 to 60. Sir.
Good.
but
Presentation
then-
is good, but the preparation has to be refined. Not this way, you have made like a thesis It's not like that. To the point. Aim, objective, material, method, result, conclusion.
Actually, I came prepared for 10 minutes, ma'am. I didn't know it would happen.
Even then, even if for 10 minutes, you have to talk in a limit.
But
Good.
even then, we covered.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening everyone. Myself Dr. Shubhangi Gowde. I am JR1 resident from GMC Nagpur. The title of my study is Study of the Drug Utilization Pattern and Adverse Drug Reactions Profile in Patients of Lymphoma in Tertiary Care Teaching Hospital. I have been guided by Dr. Vijay Murkare sir. I will directly go to the verticulated methods. It was a cross-sectional observation. The aims and objectives of my study were to study the current prescription pattern of drugs used in lymphoma, to detect and analyze adverse drug reactions to anti-cancer agents, to perform causality, severity and preventability assessment of ADRs. Coming to materials and methods, this was cross-sectional observational study. It has been conducted in Department of Radiotherapy in Government Medical College Nagpur in collaboration with Department of Pharmacology. The protocol was approved by Institutional Ethics Committee. 20 patients were enrolled. It was a 2 months of study. Prescriptions were analyzed and ADRs were noted after obtaining written informed consent of the patient. The assessment of ADRs were done by using 3 scales: causality by Naranjo's algorithm, severity by Hartwig's scale, preventability by modified Shumow and Thornton's scale. Coming to results. These are the WHO core indicators of prescription pattern. Total number of prescriptions were 20. Total number of drugs as well as drugs used by IV route were 84. Average number of drugs per prescription was 4.2. Percentage of drugs prescribed by generic name were 100% and no drug was given by brand name. Drugs from natural essential drug list were 14 and 2 drugs, that is epirubicin and mitoxantrone were not from essential drug list. Demographic profile. It has been expressed in mean plus or minus standard deviation. Age for males was 43 and for females it was 47 and weight for males was 43.94 and for females 43.25. Educational status, maximum number of patients were educated till SSC, that is primary and secondary level of education. All patients receiving chemotherapy were previously given supportive treatment by antiemetics like ondansetron or granisetron, antacids like ranitidine, and steroids like dexamethasone. Since there are 2 different regimens for Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I have prepared 2 different graphs for prescription pattern for these 2 types. Now this graph is showing prescription pattern in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We can see that the most commonly used regimen in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was CHOP regimen. So all the 4 drugs were used in maximum percentage, and certain patients having relapse were given MIND regimen also. So we can see certain percentage of drugs like Mesna, ifosfamide and mitoxantrone. Coming to drug utilization pattern in Hodgkin's lymphoma patients, ABVD regimen is the most commonly used regimen in Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it has been seen that maximum percentage of adriamycin, bleomycin and vinblastine and dacarbazine was seen, and in addition to that gemcitabine and carboplatin was also seen. This is the adverse drug reaction profile. This pie diagram is showing that alopecia was the most commonly seen ADR amongst all the ADRs, and after that nausea, vomiting, breathlessness were also commonly seen. Certain minor number of ADRs were loss of appetite, weakness, tingling, pedal edema and loose stools. Causality assessment of ADR by Naranjo's algorithm. 66.66 reactions were probable reactions and remaining 33.33 were possible reactions. Coming to preventability assessment, 51.85% were definitely preventable, 48.14% were not preventable. Severity assessment, all the 4 levels were seen. Maximum number was seen in level 1, that is 44.44%. After that level 3, 33.33%. level 4 14.81% and level 2 7.40%. Discussion. Most commonly prescribed regimen in patients of lymphoma was CHOP regimen, which supported the previous study conducted by V.V. Nimogara. Alopecia was the most commonly noticed ADR, which is in consensus with the previous study conducted by Sidzia et al. Most of the ADRs assessed as probable based on the Naranjo's algorithm, which is similar to previous study. Conclusion. Doxorubicin was the most commonly prescribed drug in overall lymphoma patients, including Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's. Alopecia was the most commonly noticed ADR, followed by nausea, vomiting, and breathlessness. In spite of pre-medication with parenteral ondansetron and ranitidine, frequency of nausea and vomiting remained high. Thank you.
Presentation. It's a very perfect methodology of presentation. It's very
Thank you, madam.
Only one thing is causality assessment. You have taken Naranjo's algorithm, but we are worldwide. We are using WHO. So how good you think is the assessment correct? There is a lot of regarding the sensitivity of Naranjo's algorithm. There are a lot of discussion. So we are following WHO UMC worldwide. So it would be ideal if you change it to WHO UMC and do it again. That's it. And a very nice presentation. Thank you.
One more? Finish?
Gliptin as an add-on therapy to metformin in type 2 diabetes mellitus patients. I'm Dr. Yasmin Rahman from Katia Medical College. So introduction, diabetes mellitus refers to a group of common metabolic disorders that share the phenotype of hypoglycemia. Improvement in glucose control is the most important therapeutic approach in primary prevention of diabetic complications. Evidence has demonstrated that 60% of patients do not achieve the glycemic targets due to the progressive nature of type 2 diabetes, making combination therapy for optimum glycemic control necessary. Selection of oral anti-hypoglycemic drugs depends on the type of diabetes, the patient's, and drug characteristics to ensure optimum therapy while minimizing adverse effects. DPP4 inhibitors play a vital role in the treatment and have relatively lesser side effects. Among the DPP4 inhibitors, information on recently introduced teneligliptin in combination with metformin is still lacking. Therefore, in this study, we have evaluated the safety and efficacy of teneligliptin as an add-on therapy in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Methodology. The protocol was approved by the Institutional Ethics Committee, and the study was conducted in accordance with the good clinical practices. A prospective, non-randomized, open-label study comprising of 100 patients enrolled for the study, of which only 49 patients were eligible for the study. All patients were enrolled following signed informed consent. The study group given treatment of teneligliptin 40 mg as an add-on to metformin 500 mg once daily. The study was conducted for a total duration of 24 weeks. The inclusion criteria: patients of type 2 diabetes mellitus based on diagnostic criteria established by the American Diabetes Association. Okay. So the main parameters I took was weight, BMI, fasting plasma glucose, postprandial glucose, and HbA1c and LDL. There were no significant changes actually in the weight and the BMI, but I noticed changes in the fasting as well as the postprandial, as well as the HbA1c percentage. This is the bar graph that I made from the baseline, and it was actually a 24-week treatment. So there was a significant reduction in the PPG as well as the FPG, fasting as well as the postprandial. The study was carried out to determine the efficacy and safety of 40 mg teneligliptin taken once daily as an add-on therapy with 500 mg metformin in patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus. The study revealed a reduction in the mean HbA1c by 0.1% from baseline. Overall, 18.27% patients achieved the American Diabetes Association recommended HbA1c goal of less than 7% after 24 weeks of therapy. We observed that there was no significant change in the BMI following the 24 weeks of teneligliptin add-on therapy with metformin. At the end of the study period, there was a significant difference observed in FPG and also a significant reduction in the PPG when compared to the baseline. Also, there were no significant changes observed in the LDL level for teneligliptin therapy as an add-on to metformin. Treatment with teneligliptin was generally well tolerated over the 24 weeks of study period. The instance of mild hypoglycemia occurred in only one patient after the 49 I had with teneligliptin combination therapy. Conclusion, this study showed that treatment with 40 mg teneligliptin as an add-on to metformin led to clinically significant reduction in the HbA1c. Overall treatment with teneligliptin was well tolerated with low incidence of mild hypoglycemia.
Now, I request everyone to come with us to the auditorium. We'll have a small quiz there.